Ani, bonjour everyone. Welcome to the Ontario Council for International Cooperation's International Development Week 2026 career panel featuring an amazing group of our Youth Policymakers Hub alumni. My name is Winterdawn Lipscombe, or Memogwe. I'm joining from Kenora, Ontario, located on Treaty 3 territory. I just wanted to start with a few housekeeping notes. The Ontario Council for International Cooperation is committed to creating a safe and inclusive space. We ask all of you to commit to our code of conduct, inspired by those of the Intercouncil Network and Amnesty Canada. This code outlines our shared commitments towards respect, inclusion, humility, safety, solidarity, patience, and openness for all participants and collaborators. Please note that closed captioning is available and can be accessed by clicking on the Show Captions option in Zoom. You will be able to move the transcript around your screen as well. Toward the end of the panel, there will be time for some questions from the audience. You can ask your questions in the chat throughout the event. We also invite you to join the conversation on social media using hashtag IDW2026 and tag OCIC on your preferred platform. With that, I'm going to hand it over to my co-host, Jeremy, for our land acknowledgement. Miigwech.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Ofwono, and I'm also a member of the current OCIC Youth Policymakers Hub. We'd like to begin with the land honoring. OCIC recognizes and honors the Indigenous peoples who have historically and do presently live and work on the traditional, both treaty and unceded territories that we operate on. These include the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit River First Nation, and many others. We acknowledge that our staff, board, volunteers, members, and broader community operate on the treaty and unceded territories of these and numerous other Indigenous peoples and nations. As we reflect on our role within the settler colonial context, we acknowledge the importance of naming Indigenous peoples and nations on whose land we live, work, and play on, and understand the importance of framing our engagement in the international cooperation sector and beyond through the lens of reconciliation and decolonization. We recognize that we have a responsibility to stand in solidarity with the Indigenous peoples who have and continue to fight for social justice on their own lands. I would now like to invite OCIC's Executive Director, Kimberly Gibbons, to introduce our first speaker.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your patience as we got started. We just had some technical difficulties, but we're thrilled to be here. So I want to thank Winter and Jeremy for beginning this event for us in a good way. I also want to thank all of the many OCIC Youth Policymaker Hub members and alumni that are contributing to our work in Ontario and across Canada in countless ways. Also to thank Sarah, Pragya, Mishka, Shehara, and Lisa, the small but mighty OCIC dream team that is behind all of our International Development Week offerings and all of our work as a council. This event is one of over 50 public engagement activities, initiatives, and communications campaigns taking place from coast to coast to coast to draw attention to specific global challenges and humanitarian crises, and to recognize and honor progress and impact, to seed new partnerships, ideas, and ways of working meaningfully together. To all of you that are here today, your presence matters. Your knowledge and expertise, your lived experience, your perspectives, your curiosity, and your care. These are all the things that make spaces like this rich, truthful, and fruitful. At OCIC, we seek to hold space for knowledge exchange and civic leadership of all kinds, particularly among and between youth of diverse backgrounds with policy and advocacy interests, and civil society organizations, especially small and medium-sized organizations, alongside academics and community-based researchers, policymakers, and elected officials alike. All of those that prioritize and value community-led action and inclusive, transformative, multi-generational change. Today, it's an honor for me to warmly welcome the Honorable Randeep Sarai, our special guest, and a champion for these same values, to provide opening remarks at this event. The Honorable Randeep Sarai was first elected in 2015 to represent the riding of Surrey Centre and currently serves as Canada's Secretary of State for International Development. He previously served as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defence. Sarai was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, as the son of Sikh immigrant parents from Punjab, India. He completed his undergraduate degree in political science at the University of British Columbia and complemented this with a law degree at Queen's University. After his studies, he began practicing law before transitioning into politics. Throughout his career, he has been deeply focused on supporting initiatives that enhance the quality of life for underserved communities. His passion for community service is reflected through co-founding VERSA, supporting youth strengthening family society, supporting community crime prevention initiatives, raising funds to combat polio, helping build a local temple, and organizing food drives. So, Minister, I'm sorry we didn't have the chance to properly welcome you in advance due to this technical challenge, but the floor is now yours for your opening remarks, including if you'd like to share any insights on your own current role and pivotal moments that brought you here today. Over to you.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me? I just want to see if I've got my
Yes, we can
audio
hear
on.
you.
Perfect. Okay. Worst thing to do is start the day and talk away, and nobody can hear you. Well, look, it's great to help kick off today's panel, and I apologize for the technical difficulties. Sometimes these security parameters prevent logging in. I want to connect with as many young people who are passionate about reducing poverty and promoting quality as possible. I think you bring a passion that's like no other, and I want to thank OCIC for bringing us together and organizing this great event as part of International Development Week, as you've already done so. But let me also begin by acknowledging that I'm joining you here from Ottawa, the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin-Anishinaabe people. Cette semaine, nous rendons hommage aux personnes qui, partout au pays et dans le monde, sont forcément de bâtir un avenir meilleur. This week, we're celebrating the people across the country and around the world who are working to build a brighter future for Canada and for the world. Whenever I speak about development issues with Canadians, I always appreciate the passion and perspective that young people bring. It's by sharing your voices, by engaging through local communities and diaspora networks, and by sharing your lived experiences, you play such an important role in championing the causes you care about. Your advocacy keeps issues like gender equality, climate action, and improving equity top of mind for politicians like me, as well as for everyday Canadians. And what gives me more confidence is that your generation understands something very essential. Global challenges do not respect borders, and neither can your solutions. Young people like you bring urgency, innovation, and a clear eyed view of what needs to change. Canada's approach to international development is grounded in that same foundation. We know that good intentions are not good enough. Results matter, accountability matters, and listening to local partners matters most. That's why I'm glad that there are so many ways that young Canadians can get involved in international development as well as in their local communities. And that's whether you're volunteering or working with civil society organizations, joining a youth council and sharing your perspective, or whether it's getting involved with OCIC or one of the amazing regional cooperation councils across Canada, or considering opportunities to give your time in a volunteer position abroad or online or through our volunteer cooperation program. As you consider a career path in international development or foreign policy, I encourage you to keep seeking out ways to get involved and to keep building your network. On my own career path, I worked as I was introduced when I was younger, whether it was helping my father and the community build a gurdwara, a temple in Vancouver, or whether it was to help the local Rotary Club raise money to help eliminate polio. When I was a lot older, crime prevention was a big thing. There's a lot of youth violence occurring in Lower Mainland, and the community needed to step up. I stepped up in high school, joining the crime prevention team and representing British Columbia at the National Crime Prevention Forum in Montreal at the time. But also after finishing my law degree, to help raise funds, move policy, to combat that very invasive, very tragic type of youth violence that had taken over 150 young men's lives, predominantly young men. And so I always had this commitment, and I've been a lot of my peers, but more mentors, I should say, have always told me that no matter how busy you are, how hard you're working, and you always have to have a passion on some community service, something to give back. That's been a mantra my father told me when he was younger, when I was younger, and people like Benmeet Buller who passed away actually serving others on the side of a highway, helping a stranded snow and trans vehicle get out of their vehicle. But unfortunately, he was hit himself, who was a minister in the provincial government, said the same thing to you. No matter how busy you are, you always have a cause. Pick up initiative and work with that. And I've always tried to do that in this path, helping many of the people that are downtrodden in downtown East Side with Good Nanak's Free Kitchen or Good Nanak Food Bank, who helps provide food for them and helping them get a permanent building. Anything I can do ever, I always try. And so I urge you all to do the same. It's an amazing way to give back, and it's very fulfilling in life. Everybody can make money, everybody can work hard, but I think giving back is something that makes society great. And I always say society works best if all the pillars of that work well. And I consider the pillars to be the government, civil society, and the private sector. If those three spokes of a wheel are very strong, society rolls very smoothly and well. If any of those three pillars are disrupted or weak, you will get bumps on the road. So hope you guys have a great panel of young leaders that are gathered here today, and I am sure the discussion will be very engaging. So I want to thank you again for joining us on today's event, and happy International Development Week. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of the output that comes out of this discussion. I may not be able to stay long enough for this because I have another event to go, but I will be looking forward to seeing the summaries that arise from this afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thanks so much for your time. I know you're traveling all over the country this week to meet with different people in Canada. Is there any one message that you want to leave with this particular audience? This is a very engaged, policy-focused, advocacy-focused kind of crowd that we have cultivated as our community at OCIC. So is there any
Sure.
specific
Yes,
message?
I would say engage with Canadians. I think this work is really great, but when times are tough financially, when people are having a challenging time paying their mortgages or paying their rent or buying groceries, they are less in tune to the great work we do abroad. But that's where the message that it's mutual prosperity, a safer, less impoverished world is better for Canada. A healthier world brings less disease to Canada, and a more prosperous world abroad opens up trade deals. I gave an example yesterday of Indonesia, which we've been helping for decades, now has alleviated poverty by 50%. And now we're doing trade deals with them. Now it's not about development as much, it's more about doing trade. So it's helped uplift them. And they've now contributed back to things like Gavi, the vaccine drive. So in order to sell it to Canadians, I think Canadians need to be engaged. You need to really tell them the importance of it and how it brings mutual prosperity, because we only have a social license and the financial resources from the government to do this work if Canadians buy into this. So that's why it's very important, not just during this week, but for the rest of the year too. When you go back, when you're talking to your parents, your families, you're back in your universities or colleges or your schools, it's always important to tell how important this work is, not just because it's the right thing to do, that it alleviates poverty and equally distributes resources to those that need it the most and helps our women and girls, but that it also helps Canada. And it helps provide a safer world, a more prosperous world, and a consumer base for our goods too. So we're able to trade with them, and we're able to get affordable, reliable partners globally in the supply chain. So that's the message I will say. It's a little complicated, but I think it needs to be shared with Canadians, and Canadians get that will continue to be champions in the world on the global stage in international development.
Thank you. I think that's great. It's a really rich insight into the things that are top of mind for you and your government. And as you know, we're all very engaged in raising issues to elected members of parliament, the priorities that are coming from community members and linked to community members around the world. So we'll be continuing to do that. And we sincerely want to thank you for your leadership. I know you're very passionate about youth engagement and about the role of small and medium-sized organizations and about sending delegates around the world to participate and to learn and share at global meetings, those sorts of efforts. So we look forward to continuing to do that with you and having opportunities for the youth and the members of our community to meet with you in person as we go forward.
Thank you, Kimberly, and thank you to all the members on this panel.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So it's now my pleasure to pass the Zoom mic over to our moderator, Christina Muya.
Thank you so much, Kim. It's nice to see everyone here today. So I'm going to just start off sharing a little bit about myself. Good afternoon. It's nice to see everyone here. I hope you're all doing well and keeping warm. Just to give you a bit of a background about myself, um, because I know a lot of you here are kind of interested about, how to break into the international development sector, and that's something that you want to kind of learn from the panelists here. So I started off my journey working with the Ontario government. I worked with the Ministry of Transport, the Ministry of Environment, um, and I also volunteer with environmental and development nonprofits like United Nations. I worked with the Food and Agriculture Organization, as well as the international nonprofits like the Mennonite Economic Development Associates, as well as World Renew. And the work there was around food security, sustainable agriculture, and international development. But when I was, in my work at United Nations, I noticed that, youth from marginalized countries, developing nations particularly, and African countries specifically, were kind of underrepresented in the United Nations, and that made me believe that they don't have a voice in the kind of change that will be there on international platforms like the UN. So that kind of led me to a passion to kind of think about how to support young people to feel empowered to take part in change, whether it's locally or globally. So I worked with Technique Global in a project called Rising Youth, where we're kind of like dispersing grants to young people across Canada to drive community initiatives and drive impactful change in their communities. And then I did my master's as well on exploring social enterprise and how young people, across Africa are using this model to drive change in African countries. And I also co-founded Be a Sharer, which is a documentary and skills training project that connects women and women entrepreneurs. And we also engage youth volunteers to be able to come together and learn from each other. And currently, I'm working at Skills for Change as a manager of social enterprise, where I manage social enterprise programs to bring in funds that support immigrants and refugees. So as you can see, my path is not linear, and I'm sure most of the panelists here, their path isn't linear either. So you probably be learning from them very soon. So we have an incredible group of experts with us here today. Um, so before we dive into, what about their work, I want to explore, more about their path. So tell us about, so I'll start off with one of the panelists, Tashin, we'll start off with you. Um, so tell us about your career path. What is your current role, and what has your career journey been like? And what were some of the defining, forks in the road or the challenges or pivotal moments that shaped your career? So you can just choose one moment that's, specifically you can talk about. So I'll pass it over to Tashani.
Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to the OCIC team for inviting me to be part of this brilliant panel. And if I were to talk about my career path, Christina, it's very similar to the note that you shared. It is non-linear. I currently serve as the operations manager with the City of Toronto in Councillor Candival's office. But even before I landed this position, my career journey was kind of like a roller coaster. But it has always been intentional. I volunteered with UNICEF Canada, Amnesty International, Plan International Canada while I was a student. And during this period, I was able to secure an internship with the federal government and slowly moved to nonprofit, where I worked in advocating for gender-based violence and human trafficking and a lot of community advocacy work, and finally transitioned into the City of Toronto. And if I were to pick a moment that really sticks out, I would have to say that navigating this was definitely a challenge, but especially with the job market that we have. And I think that a lot of us may have experience looking through LinkedIn, browsing job opportunities. I was there too. But one thing I've learned that it's so important to build relationships that goes beyond our resume. And with engaging in these wonderful spaces, I was able to connect with a lot of wonderful fellows. I mean, for me to secure this job, I would have to give a lot of credit to YPH members, and they were able to connect me with the appropriate doors that really opened up opportunities for me to step into. And, sharing these stories, it's really reaffirming that when navigating these career journey, it can be very lonesome, but at the end of the day, it is a community effort. And with the work that I do, which sits in the intersection between strategy and service, even being part of this panel, I hope that I'm able to share some of my career journey insights that would inspire you, or if you folks need any support in your journey, I'll be more than happy to connect you with the appropriate door that kind of opens up your career pathway as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane, for sharing that. Definitely resonates, being able to build a network of people that, are kind of doing the same thing as you, whether it's YPH or, be part of OCIC or any other communities. I think it's really relevant. So Biko, does part of that, what she just mentioned resonate with you? You can talk about your career path as well, but, does that resonate with you, like the partnership building or the community engagement?
Yeah, lovely to meet you, everyone, and lovely to see everyone on the call. Yeah, excited to be here and dive a little bit into my career path. Um, I currently work as the manager of digital media at the Canadian Partnership for Women and Children's Health, which is our membership of over 110 members working to advance the health and rights of women and girls around the world. I currently work within the communications team with some oversight on some of our digital media assets and tools. But getting towards that wasn't necessarily something I was thinking of when I was doing my undergrad. So I did philosophy, politics, and economics as part of my degree. And I was thinking that maybe I'll work in one of those spheres a bit more as I was graduating. But my path almost started like in my first internship. I did something within the communication space, honestly, just like a summer job, working within like as part of a communications team, just as a social media intern, and that's where really things started for me. Getting to be familiar with the space, learning about how kind of things on digital work, and then as I was graduating and having had a few different experiences in a few communications teams, I was looking for positions in the sector that were tied to global health or tied to like international cooperation, or more generally like gender equity. And so the position at Canwatch kind of came up initially as an assistant position. And what was really neat about it was I was able to build from a few different experiences I was having. So I could build from some of my politics background in my degree, but also from some of the internship opportunities I was having. Um, it's one of those neat things where sometimes you're starting off with something and you're not really sure where it will take you. But then a few years later, it kind of comes full circle of, oh, like I can pull a little bit from this, I can pull a little bit from that. Like every experience kind of feeds into each other, even if in the moment it doesn't really feel like something that will lead somewhere. So I think a big part of my career has been kind of learning and building from those different experiences, and recognizing that um, the things that we challenge ourselves to do and the things that we put ourselves out to do ultimately um, give us different skill sets that we can apply in our different fields. So I think that's been a big part of my learning into getting where I am today.
Thank you for sharing that, Biko. What about you, Alison? What's your path been like?
Yeah, so I'm currently the executive director of a small organization called Rajon. And a lot of my path kind of echoes what Biko and Tashin were saying, or sorry, Tashin. Um, so you don't have to know what you're going to do before you get started. I think that's really important. My career has been all over the place. So I did my undergrad at Carleton, political science and communications. I thought I wanted to end up in the government. Um, Job market wasn't great. I ended up being a server. I worked for a refinery. I tried all these random jobs. Um, basically out of necessity. But the important thing is what I did on the other side. So I would work to get my cash during the day, and then at night I'd do volunteering. I would be part of like Rotaract, which is youth Rotary. If you're not aware, highly recommend it, especially in the international sector. So that's kind of I just went all in. And I'm from a smallish town too. I'm from near Aamjiwnaang First Nation outside of Sarnia. So kind of far from the center of the world of Toronto. So there's not a ton of opportunities. So sometimes you just have to make your own. Just say yes. Say yes to everything and anything. Ask for coffees. Ask for Zoom meetings. Just kind of find opportunities. And if an opportunity doesn't exist, make one. I luckily was able to go on the IYP, the International Youth Internship Program in Ghana. So that was kind of the start into the international sector for me. And then from there, when I moved home, I got reintroduced to different organizations. I was, working at Shelter Box. COVID hit. I went back for my master's because I couldn't even get into networking sessions. So it might not look like you have a path. It might not look like you're following a path, but each of these stops along the way kind of created skills that I didn't know I needed to get me where I needed to be. So, say yes, ask, and just garner those skills. And like Pico was saying, put those all together in the end, right? They are important. But also join a board, join YPH, join any group of like-minded individuals who can help you develop those skills and bounce your ideas into theirs and kind of grow from there. So confusing answer because it's been a confusing life, but you don't have to figure it out yet, I promise.
Thank you, Alison. So Laura, what about you? Does any of the stuff that the other panelists say, does that resonate with you? The community building, partnership building, or kind of just like, try to take everything as it comes and learn from it and kind of see how things go from there. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think, yeah, definitely agree. It's not linear. I think initially going into university, my mindset was like, okay, I finished my undergrad, I'll do my master's and then a job. And that wasn't the case at all, especially I graduated during COVID. So that was like a big shift. I think initially upon graduating, my mind was set on like working internationally and wanting to leave Canada and live abroad to be a part of development work. And that just wasn't possible during COVID. So like that pivot was huge, but it definitely allowed me to also learn about the Canadian ecosystem in terms of international assistance, like what's happening in Canada, who are some of the organizations that are contributing to that, looking into areas of focus that I was really passionate about. So who's a part of the space? What are the programs that they're running? How are they involved? Is this something that I really want to be a part of? So that kind of struck my pathway. Similarly, it's not linear. I was doing volunteering, internships, 3-month contracts, 6-month contracts, 1-year contracts. Like that's the reality of the development sector, especially when funding is a big portion of how programs are being run. So I think it's important to be okay with not having that next step lined up right away because you are figuring it out, and it's important to also view it as a trial and error because you have to figure out what you like, what you don't like, and what you want to continue pursuing. And the development sector is very big. Like there's space for everyone, whether you're interested in the humanitarian sector, in the education sector, and working with vulnerable populations, working in Toronto, Ottawa, Canada, internationally. There's a lot of opportunities. So it's kind of figuring out what you're really interested in, how you can fit in, what skills you need, and what you want to contribute your time and energy to, because at the end of the day, that is the output that you are being a part of. So that was more so my journey trying to figure it out. Currently, I am an analyst in Grand Challenges Canada, so I work in the global health and innovation space internationally. So that's been a really cool opportunity to continue working with international communities I'm based in Toronto. But global health wasn't my background. So like I navigated different avenues to kind of get into the space where I am. So I do definitely resonate in terms of like networking, reaching out to people, asking for help, asking for organizations that you're curious to learn more about. How did they get into those roles? What are they working on currently? What skill sets do they feel are most relevant? Look into career coaches as well. That's definitely, I think, like an untapped resource that I didn't always really consider, but there's career coaches who tap into like different areas of interest. So if it is something that does align with you, like it doesn't hurt to ask for help in that sense and get more advice and guidance in that way. Similarly, showing up to networking events, reaching out on LinkedIn to people who you're curious to learn more about, joining spaces and kind of building your own community in that sense so that you can continue learning about what's happening in the development sector. You're always going to be learning. I think that's definitely something that I continue to engage with, that development sector it involves a lot of learning, unlearning and relearning how to work with community. So that's something that's really important. So kind of figuring out like what makes sense to you, what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, who's involved in that space, who can you talk to, how do you navigate that, what skills can you contribute, what can you learn from that, and building those partnerships, those connections, that self-awareness and that approach to development work will be really helpful. So I think that's definitely been something that I've learned throughout my career so far.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and everyone as well. Some of the things that just came up from the conversation that I noticed right away was, most of us volunteered, to kind of try and get into the spaces that we want to be in. We kind of looked for community, whether it's YPH, the Youth Policy Makers Hub, or whether it's, OCSC is another community you can also join as well. They have all sorts of events. Another option, of course, is to reach out to people on LinkedIn for coffee chats or reach out to organizations that you're interested in and do research on them, find out who works there and kind of try to figure out how can I get in. If you have a specific place you want to go to, just make sure you don't lose your eye on the ball. Keep working hard towards that. Whether it's you're volunteering, whether you're reaching out to somebody working there, there's always ways to get in. So never give up if you have a specific place you want to go to. But if you're not sure, that's okay. You can always try out different things. And I'm sure eventually it will come full circle, like it came for Biko, right? So you don't have to necessarily have the answers today. So don't be too overwhelmed with everything. You can always you get there eventually. All right. So moving on to the next question. So it's clear that these pivotal moments that you guys have shared often happen when you're surrounded by the right community. For many of us, the community was the Youth Policymakers Hub. Building on what you have said, was there a specific moment from your time at the hub that still resonates with you today? Well, I can say for myself, for example, a time that resonated with me will be working on an op-ed with other, YPH members. We were kind of advocating for universal basic income for young people, and we ended up on an op-ed in the Toronto Star. But I think the most important thing for me was the learning chance of like how, learning about more about policy and also learning how to kind of speak on issues like this and how to advocate for something that you really care about. And we also got 100 signatures and we kind of pushed that through to the MP. So, just that process of being involved in policy was, really incredible for me and was great. So I'm gonna pass it over to you guys. We'll start with Laura this time.
Yeah, thanks so much. In terms of my time at YPH, sorry, it was more so, I think, having the intentional space to reflect and engage and learn about policy with folks who are also curious and like-minded and who may have a background in policy already or who may have like just a general curiosity as well. So I think for me especially, it was more so like being able to learn, to ask questions, and to come together with other youth. So we had our in-person retreat. And we got a chance to have a workshop from Results Canada. So that was like another opportunity to learn about organizations that were also a part of the advocacy space, but more so just connecting and learning what advocacy can look like in a more tangible way. Because I feel like it's a very big concept and there's a lot of work that goes into it, but it doesn't always feel like I could be a part of it. But the way that it was kind of broken down was really digestible and easier to get a sense of like who can you collaborate with, how do you reach out to your local representatives, your provincial representatives, how do you also like engage with the opportunities to advocate based in Ottawa. So I think that kind of made it really easy to understand advocacy work, how I could be a part of it, and how I can collaborate with peers in my page cohort, but also beyond, to be able to take those actions and learn how to do that in ways that felt engaging for me. And so I think that was something that definitely resonated and stood out. And then just meeting the folks who were also within the YPH cohort was really cool. And the same connecting with them and seeing where they're up to and what they're accomplishing now has been really fun to be a part of as well. So yeah, I think definitely supporting youth leadership is something that I'm also very passionate about. So opportunities to learn myself, but also to support others in that space is huge for me. So I think that OCIC definitely created that unique opportunity through the YPH program.
Thank you, Laura. I'll pass it over to Alison.
Sure. Most of my answer is going to just repeat Laura's, so I'll keep it short. Yeah, the interconnectedness of the ideas and challenges and kind of just being in a space with people you can talk about things you're passionate with. One thing too, I'd say from that is, you share ideas, you connect with one another, but the space really gave me motivation to just do it. You know what I mean? It gave me the empowerment feeling of, you can reach out. you have a community behind you, whether you're in YPH or not. There are like-minded people who will support you. So just do it. Just influence policy, um, collaborate, create community. That's kind of the biggest.
Yeah, thank you. What about you, Biko?
Yeah, echoing a lot of the insights on just the community aspects. One of my highlights from the YPH was honestly just getting to meet everyone in person and in the retreat and hearing about everyone's work and really sharing in that sense of enthusiasm and motivation that everyone kind of in the room has. Um, it really is a special group of folks. But I think one of the highlights for me from that year was really just at the end of the year we came up with a project with a few other members, um, and what we chose to do was a series of podcasts on a few issues we were each passionate about. I did one focused on menstrual health, and I spoke with these really incredible activists and advocates in Kenya who are working with communities and young girls in a few different counties in Kenya. But one of the things that really kind of stood out from that conversation was just um, how when we talk about like our work often in the sector, um, we're here in Canada and you know it can feel a little bit far removed at times from what we're advocating for. But hearing about like a lot of what's leading change, I think was really instrumental. I think one of the key things was when we talk about some of the issues in different spaces, things don't really happen in silos. And so we're having conversations on menstrual health, but we're also having conversations on poverty and things like child marriage and you know really difficult topics, but I think topics that ultimately are important to think about in more broader terms. And I think one of the reflections from the YPH and going through that project was yeah, nothing really happens in its own vacuum, and there's a real interconnectedness to a lot of the things we think about. Ultimately, we all have different interests, but I think what's really connecting is the sense that um, in some ways we're all pushing the boat in the same direction, which is towards like a better world for each of us. So yeah, I think that was one of the really neat parts from my time there.
Yeah, thank you, Biko, for sharing that, and also the connection to Kenya and a developing nation, especially within the context of policy. What about you, Tashin?
Once again, I'm going to echo what everyone has shared, but I love hearing that throughout each year, there is that common synopsis between all of us, just like really appreciating the community that YPH is able to facilitate for us. I mean, the first time I was able to meet our cohort, I believe it was also at the retreat, just walking into the room and seeing like the different walks of lives and stories and ideas that were shared. And even though they were so diverse, there was the synergy that we were all trying to make a difference, trying to make change happen in our own communities, in our own unique ways. And just hearing the stories and the resiliency for each and every single youth, it was so inspiring. And even later on in the year, there were a lot of events that YPH was hosting. And I was able to connect with professionals who've been doing this work for like 15, 20, 30 years and more. And just hearing that they too are trying to figure out some of the problems that youth are trying to solve. So that exchange in conversation that's generational, that someone who could be much older than I am are trying to figure something out that youth who was around my age or even younger. And so the appreciation between the intergenerational exchange in knowledge and conversation and just the way it's facilitated was just so beautifully done that it's not just uh the adults leading the way, but youth are also making changes and paving their path. And we bring such unique perspectives that is certainly beneficial to the international development community. And I think just being part of those conversations and learning from everyone, it's been truly something that I carry till this day.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, definitely, being part of a community of diverse voices, experiences, people who are really passionate about the sector and passionate about um, coming together and making change, I think is really empowering. Like, Alison said, like, just being in that space just makes you feel like you can really do anything because everybody in that space is also just as passionate as you are. So, such a great space that has been created through the YPH to be able to just bring young people together from different walks of life to advocate on different issues, but to also empower one another, because that's what you're really doing in that space. And to be able to make change, beyond spaces we're in and, beyond, locally, but also globally as well. So thank you all for sharing that. All right. So I know we talked a lot about career paths, our inspiration, some of the things that motivate us, but let's get into some of the mechanics. So a major hurdle for students in this room today or young people in the room today is the experience gap. It's a challenging time to be looking for work. I know all of you have heard in the news, how the youth unemployment rate is really high at the moment. People are leaving universities and colleges are not able to get, into employment, and it takes quite a long time. And of course, AI is changing, the world drastically and quickly. So people are kind of thinking, I need to get a job. But the problem is you need to get a job to get experience, but needing the experience, you also need to get the job first. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So, the question that I have for you guys is, what's one practical tool, habit, or mindset shift you believe is essential for students entering the international development or policy sector today? And if you could go back to the start, what advice would you give to your younger self? Let's start with you, Alison.
Sure. So I think the summary of my next kind of suggestions is, going back to what I started with just saying yes, but be conscious of your commitment. So you can follow through to what you say yes to. Say yes to whatever you can and offer what you can. I've got notification my connection's unstable, so apologies if I cut out. But just because, for example, for volunteer role, they're looking for one specific thing, doesn't mean you can't reach out to them to offer your skills in a different way. Join a board, learn languages. That one was really important to me. I'm sure many people on this call already speak 2-3 languages. Coming from a very Anglo community, I went to university barely speaking a little bit of French, but nothing helped me more than speaking Spanish and French. There's a question in the chat too that kind of comes out of this about networking. We keep saying network, build your community, but what does that mean and how does it help? So I think it's important when we talk about networking, you need to meaningfully network. It's not about how many connections you make, it's about how deep the connections you're making. So you're never going to get a contract out of networking. I'm going to be honest with you right off the bat. You're not going to walk into a networking event and someone's going to say, hey, I have this job opportunity. But, you go out for coffee with someone, you have a couple coffees later on, you're talking about life, you're talking about job market, you're talking about your skills. They'll see something or in their organization or another, and they'll send it to you. Like, trust me, trust the process, but it's about building deep connections, not building numerous connections. So attending OCIC events is a really great opportunity for that. But follow up on those connections and just ask for coffee. I don't want to speak for the panel, but definitely send me an email, find me on LinkedIn if you ever want to chat. I'm kind of isolated, but say yes, reach out, just go for it. It's going to be a long slog. Take what you can, volunteer on the side. That's kind of what I got to say about that.
All right. And Laura, what about you?
I think similarly, yes, say yes to opportunities that come up. I think thinking about the development sector, like I said, it's a big sector, but also think outside NGO work because there are, like, for example, universities who are doing research projects that are community-based and informed in development in a different approach. So I had a chance to be a research assistant with York University and Toronto Metropolitan University, who were leading projects that were focusing on education spaces for marginalized and immigrant communities. So that was a way that I leveraged some of my international development skills in a different area that I didn't traditionally think was international development, but it does lend itself in that way too. There's also like think tanks. There's also different like social entrepreneurship and startups that are looking to be an impact-driven organization or entity itself. Corporations who are looking to be more sustainable. They're trying to like do the things differently as well. They're looking for like skills that are transferable from the development sector. So I think trying to find opportunities outside that are not just NGO work is a good way to also kind of get a sense of it. I similarly with like the networking and understanding of jobs are relevant within or realistic within the development sector now. I think there definitely are opportunities, but I think the networking piece ties back into like not just like going to networking events, and that can also be like a good way to meet folks, but trying to understand where you want to be yourself. So showing up to those spaces, meeting folks who are in those spaces, is really helpful. Like my first job, my first actual job with an NGO here was through an organization that I had volunteered with in the past. And so like being able to know some of the programs that they're running, having that understanding, learning some of the folks in the organization, and then being familiar with the work culture and the values. And that was something that was really interesting to me. So that kind of like aligned, and I was able to get a job with that organization. But it came back from like volunteering and like networking in a different lens. So I think it's like networking can be a lot of like intense when you're trying to reach out cold calls and set up with folks who may never respond. But like the worst thing is you don't hear back from them, and you can just talk to other folks who are interested in sharing what they've learned, their skills, their pathways as well. So I think it's an important skill. It doesn't necessarily lead to a direct job, but it's good to know who's in the space that you want to be a part of. And you never know what those connections can come up with down the line. So it's definitely a good way to build that out. So I say yes to the opportunities. Don't shy away from applying for that volunteer role, for that internship, for that part-time role that you see, or that full-time role, even if you don't meet every single requirement. A lot of the folks who are applying don't either, so don't like hold yourself back in that way. And give it a try. Reach out to folks who may have already worked there in the past. Stay connected with your professors in university as well. They may also have like research opportunities coming up, or may be able to refer you to different opportunities. There's also like development and international offices in universities, so there could be jobs there that could be of interest to you as well. So as much as you want to like stay away from university after you graduated, there are opportunities and ways to go back and find a job that could be meaningful within the development sector there. But yeah, I think development is also very complex, so definitely check in with yourself. There are a lot of things happening within the development sector depending on the field that you're a part of. So I think say yes, but also check in with yourself and how you're doing, and take that time for yourself too. But definitely, yeah, just say yes when you can and where it's feasible, and kind of get a sense of where you see yourself within the sector, I think is definitely a good starting point before you start applying for everything that you see. Kind of like find out what works for you. What are your values? What are your passions? And how do these roles align with what you want for yourself?
What about you, Biko? Thank you, Laura.
Yeah, that's a lot of really great advice. Yeah, just on my end, I think one of the neat things is just learn about the organizations in the sector that you're interested in. Um, and with a lot of the sector, you know, a lot of organizations have different areas of focus and areas of work, but there are some commonalities and there's also some distinctions. And so I think kind of being aware of if there's something you're interested in, if it's a space you're looking to enter, like what are some of the projects they're engaged in, what are some of their focuses, read their strategic plans, see what they're thinking about over the next few years, you know, like there's some smaller technical things that are I think important when you're kind of looking into the space to help you kind of stand out and set yourself apart. Yeah, so I think on my end, it's being mindful of some of those things. At Canot, we have a jobs board, we have an events board, we have a members page that helps compile some of those opportunities in the sector and things that are coming up. And I think one of the neat things about putting yourself out there is even if sometimes it doesn't work out, you learn from the experience and you see. Um, I think even sometimes just the process of putting together a CV or putting together like a resume or even just attending an event and hearing the conversation is you pick up little things on what are some areas that you might want to build in, what are some areas you might want to volunteer in, so that for the next position you're a bit more informed and equipped for what you're kind of looking at. So I think yeah, some of those are some of those things are super neat and helpful in thinking about where you want to enter.
Yeah, thank you for that, Biko. What about you, Tashin?
I think this is such a wonderful question, and I wish I was watching this panel when I was starting my career journey because there's such incredible advice that's been shared. And I think if I could give myself an advice is, if I could go back in time, is just be creative. And even if it's not me engaging in international development space, there are that knowledge and skills that I've already obtained, whether it's through school, courses, engagement opportunities at events, or being part of these communities that can be transferred into other spaces. For instance, I work for the City of Toronto, which is a municipal government. It's very local, right? But I was still able to transfer a lot of the international development lens and framework into my day-to-day activities. One thing that I've learned when I was entering into this policy sector is that even the most well-written policy, it needs to be feasible in day-to-day activities. Like residents experience policy in their day-to-day lives in the most mundane activities, whether it's garbage collection or traffic calming, safety, or even snow removal. There are so many municipal services and programs that needs to have that equity lens. Is it equal? Is it accessible? Some of these topics that we often speak about in international development spaces. So not to be discouraged that, oh, I'm not in this dream job or this dream organization, but to be creative, to lean in and just explore, okay, that didn't work out, let me pivot and just explore if I can still share some of my knowledge to my local communities. For instance, we had a major snowstorm. I mean, a couple weeks ago, just 2, 3 weeks ago. I'm sure it impacted a lot of folks in Toronto. And a lot of the conversations that we were having at our office and with a counselor that, okay, this is creating a lot of gaps. Like folks cannot go from point A to point B. Seniors, folks with various accessibility needs, students. So how can we make our community a lot more accessible? How can we create more equitable procedures and investments to ensure that people are safe, people are able to thrive in their own communities locally? And so being able to have the international development perspective and skills that I was able to obtain from years of knowledge, and I was able to implement it here. We're doing a lot of like surveys, getting testimonials, hearing from communities, something that the minister also shared, right? Really engaging with people like your neighbors, because these engagement opportunities and conversations ultimately allows us to create policies that leave a real impact. So if I could really go back in time, I would be more kind to myself and to ask myself to be creative. Like if it doesn't work out, it's okay because more doors will be opened if we continue to drive our mission to make a change.
Yeah, thank you. All those are incredible answers. Just to recap what was mentioned, volunteering, networking, looking up the organizations that you're interested in and trying to figure out how you can get your foot in the door. But don't be just like sort of pigeonholed into just international development as a place to work. You can work anywhere and get the transferable skills that you need in so many different ways. Even something as simple as working even as a grocery store when you start out in your career could give you some of those skills because you have customer service, right? So don't necessarily dismiss any opportunity that comes your way. There's ways to get those experiences. From my point of view, I would definitely say follow your interests. If you have a specific interest that you are already thinking about within international development, let's say it's global health or supporting women and girls. And just as examples, just follow your interest and it will lead you where you're supposed to be, right? So just thinking about it more of a bigger picture kind of thing. Your interests always lead you where you're supposed to be, and where you end up is probably the right place for you. All right, so don't be overwhelmed. I know it's a lot right now to be looking for work, and the job market is not so doesn't look so good. But just think about different ways that you can get your foot in the door. And if you are kind of like, worried about networking, because it can be very intimidating, especially when you're young, to ask people for coffee or to reach out on LinkedIn and be like, hey, can I meet with you? Just think about ways that you can connect with that person. Maybe you can do a bit of research on that person and what they've done in their past, and the kind of work that you want to do. So when you're in that conversation, you can show your passion and your interests in that conversation about the thing that you want to work on with them on, so they can kind of see, this person really cares about this type of work. So just think about being prepared before you go into those coffee chats. Don't go in blindly. You want to show that you understand the sector and you understand what's happening. So you can also give your perspective, and they can kind of look at you as somebody who understands this sector, and you can give bring value as well. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're at 1:06. Still looking at the time. So once you found the back door and you're in the room, right? Let's say you get the job. The technical skills you have can only get you so far. So I want to talk about the human side of policy. You've navigated some complex negotiations. Some of you have talked about, how some of the things that they've kind of navigated in the past. But which specific soft skill has been your secret weapon? And how can the aspiring professionals on this call start practicing it now? So what soft skill or skills do you think are very relevant to be able to have helped you personally to be able to be where you are today? Start off with Biko.
Yeah. I think the biggest one is flexibility. Um, I think sometimes when we're thinking of career paths and we're thinking of areas to go into, and I think this has been a common thread in the conversation on just how people pivot and think of different spaces. But yeah, I think sometimes it's recognizing that, your skill set or the things you've learned or the experiences you've had, don't necessarily have to go in one direction. I think one of the neat things for me has been not tying myself necessarily to one particular area of thought as something I could do. Um, and I think, yeah, I think embracing and acknowledging that um, the things that kind of get you where you are today can get you somewhere else, can get you somewhere else too. A lot of things are fairly transferable to some degree. So yeah, I think flexibility is the biggest thing, and just embracing that in the different ways it kind of comes up.
Thank you, Biko. What about you, Tashin?
I think I would say empathy. Just being very empathetic when listening to community. With the work that we do, we are bound to run into people who come from different walks of life, who may have different like perspectives of how they view the world, to which you may disagree, and that's okay, right? And especially when we look into policy, we need to take everyone's perspectives into consideration in order for us to make a wholesome impact. And so I think having the empathetic lens towards other, but also towards ourselves as well, that I hope that we're not being very hard on ourselves while we're doing the work. Sometimes the work that we do, we may not see the result right away, because when it comes to these kind of work, it takes a long time to see the ripple effect. But to having to have that assurance that I'll continue to be empathetic, not just towards others, but also to myself, because just a sheer belief that it is going to make a difference one way or the other.
Thank you for that, Tashin. Laura?
Yeah, I think coming down to like a human-centered lens to the work that you do, I think you're working with diverse communities. You may be working in a completely unknown, unfamiliar country or community being within the development sector. So I think it's approaching it like with a trust-based empathy, and then also just like you're both human, you're both trying to like navigate complex circumstances. Of course, there may be different social locations and like privileges that come with working on the development sector, but I think you're tapping into a very complex space. So I think being like partnership oriented, being self-aware, navigating cross-cultural communication, like these are skills that are really handy and really important. So I would highlight those specifically. I think they're definitely really important within the development sector, and as things are changing within the development sector itself currently, I think those are definitely something that'll be really important and definitely stronger attributes down the line to like what the development sector will look like. So I would highlight those for sure.
Thank you, Laura. Alison?
Yeah, I don't have much to add because I think all those examples were exactly what I would suggest. I think the only thing I'd add though is curiosity and creativity. Um, Especially in the development sector, we work with very little money, which means you have to be creative. So if you can get creative now in whatever way and show that, it's extremely important. And not just with funding, but also new ideas and being able to collaborate and being curious about other people's opinions and being curious about how other people work or other ways of working or how partnerships work or, cross-cultural competencies. I think those things are kind of the basis of all the other soft skills you need. But empathy, flexibility, all of these other things, I think, is the skills you need. And if you can show that, that's way more important than hard skills, in my opinion. Now, will AI weed you out when your resume goes in? Maybe, but make sure you find a way to demonstrate those things. And I think soft skills are extremely important in the development sector.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Definitely, what you guys said resonated with me as well. Like soft skills are definitely very important, as Alison said, in this sector. Because you may not have the technical skills, but you can always learn those, right? But soft skills, it's important to be able to showcase those from the beginning when you're starting out. And I do agree with you. All those points are so relevant, like flexibility, curiosity, creativity, empathy, and it talks about being self-aware as well, Laura. So all those points do resonate with me as well because I'm just thinking that we're living in a changing world. It's changing so quickly, and the development sector will not look the same 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. And of course, right now there's a lot of challenges towards power, like, working towards decolonization and how, more power can be given back to communities in developing countries to be able to make change in their own ways. So just being a person that's flexible and adaptable in this space is very crucial because change will come and it will come fast. So you should also be self-aware as well when asking yourself, why am I doing this when I'm doing this and why is this important, right? Because sometimes you could find yourself in a situation where you're doing something or that you don't agree with, right? Or it doesn't align with your values. So, it's also really important to be value aligned with everything you're doing to ensure that the outcome from the work that you're doing is something that you're comfortable with as well. Because some things, in this sector can also be, what's the word? Um, they can be challenging, right? And especially if you are born in some of those countries and, you can kind of see some of the challenges that people are facing. It can be really challenging to see when change is not being made in a certain way and when um, things are kind of taken for granted or power is being abused. So, just emotional intelligence, being self-aware, being curious, being creative, being adaptable, but also always tapping into yourself is really crucial as well. All right. On to the next question. So I'm just trying to pull up my questions here. Kind of lost them. All right, so everybody talks about, soft skills, of course. So sharpening those skills, and doing this work is always rewarding, right? That's why most of us are in this sector, because we get to see some of the impact of the work that we're doing. But let's be honest, it's also really exhausting. So we can't talk about a sustainable career without talking about a sustainable self. So how do you personally handle the emotional weight of this sector? And what's one non-negotiable boundary that you've set to prevent burnout? Because that's very common in international development as well as nonprofit sector, as most of you already know. So, who would like to go first? Tashin?
I was hoping someone else would go before me, but because this is a question that I often ask myself, because truthfully told, I don't have the perfect formula for this, because it's something that I'm still navigating, trying to figure out ways to not be burned out. It is something that is very real. It's something that I've experienced before, and I'm trying my best to prevent it from happening. And I think it's just leaning into my hobbies. I kind of have a whole set of hobbies that I kind of go through every season. And leaning into my passion has been truly something that keeps me sane, allows me to draw that boundary from work and me time, whether it's crocheting, painting. I started baking recently. Not a great baker at all, but I do it anyway. But finding those pockets of joy, because the work and the substance that we often tackle in international development spaces can be very heavy, difficult, and at times it may seem like, oh, am I really making an impact when the needle's really not moving as much as I would like it to? And so really creating those pockets of joy allows me to keep sane as much as I can. Even if it's really bad at baking, I'll still do it anyway.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. What about you, Laura?
Yeah, I think for me, I find like it's hard to talk about like what's happening at work with folks who are not in the development space or fully aware because it's not the same kind of engagement in that sense. So I think for me, like what's been really helpful is like kind of building my own community in a sense. So like engaging with folks who are working with different organizations who are from the development space and study development or who I can kind of like reflect and have conversations and kind of like see different perspectives from and kind of be able to like not just hold it all in my head and kind of like just go nuts trying to deal with it on my own. So I think that's been helpful for me. And I think similarly, like finding hobbies where I can just like completely disconnect and like step back from everything else that's happening. And I think it's hard to disconnect entirely from what's happening in the world with like all the news that we see all the time. So I think just trying to find your community, your space, and like kind of like your own protecting your own space type of approach is really important. I think that's more so what's worked for me. But yeah, definitely not the perfect solution for it all similarly, but that's something that has worked for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Alison?
What a crazy day to get this question. I was started sending emails at 5 a.m. this morning because I woke up from stress dreams. So I'm not doing well on this front. But I'll tell you some things I've been trying that when they work great. And I got to hold myself to them. So I think kind of bouncing off Laura's point about community, find a friend that you can cry or complain or discuss with, not emotional dumping, but that is there for you. It can be a partner, a friend, you know, even someone in the space who's willing to, chat about those issues. But I think that's super important because there's nothing more frustrating than being upset about not getting a grant and then complaining to somebody who works, in retail and they don't get it and you're more frustrated in the end. Um, the other thing I'd say is don't put your work email on your personal phone. That's a boundary that I'm working on. But I think the biggest one is just finding a person or people to be with, and just be with, no matter what state you're in.
Thank you. And Biko?
Yeah, echoing the lens on community. I think that's incredibly important. And I think like when we talk about like events and going to things, it's often sometimes we talk about it like in these spaces, especially this being a career panel with like the networking piece. But I think part of it is also just meeting like-minded people and people who are interested and curious about some of the things that you are, but also worried about some of the things that you are. So I think sometimes, those spaces are really good for that too, and finding places you can land and share and have conversations with. So I think that part of it is also really neat. Put yourself out there and sometimes they're harder to find, but I do think, making space and time for um yeah, to decompress and share with people who are in the space with you, I think is really neat. And I think one of the thoughts that have kind of been circulating over the last few years has been like the idea of like a lot of what we're working with, like we're often within the development space dealing with really big things and even like within the humanitarian ones. And sometimes it feels like a really big mountain to climb. But I think one of the thoughts that have kind of been centering me over the last few years, and I don't know if this is helpful for people or not, but like some of the mountains we're climbing, we might not get to the top of, but I think the process of trying together is still worthwhile in itself. So don't put the pressure of feeling like you have to get to the top, even as you do your work. Like I think the process of trying to push the needle forward in itself is a worthwhile endeavor. But it's also shouldn't be like a burden and a weight on you if you feel like you're not going to get there. Some of these things have been struggles that our predecessors and our ancestors and previous advocates have been carrying on for decades and centuries. So if we can do a little bit to push the needle forward, I think that's worthwhile in itself. We don't have to do everything by ourselves, and feel like we have to carry that weight all the way. So I think that's what would be really neat for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Biko. Yeah, I really like all those points you guys mentioned. Definitely, you don't have to carry the whole world on your shoulders. People are doing the little that they can in the little corners of the world, and all driving change somehow. So you are, part of the puzzle. You're part of that bigger picture. So just always remember that, as Biko said, you're just moving the needle at a time, and you can only do so much. You're one person. So you don't have to take everything on. I would say for myself, would definitely be, using your sick time and using your vacation time. Definitely have time that's dedicated enough for work and just for yourself or with your, friends, family, whoever in your circle, or just do something that you love to do, whether it's traveling or just sitting home and watching, reality TV shows, whatever it is that you like to do, make time for that because whatever brings you joy will also calm your mind and will also bring you peace as well. So, just think about different ways that you can find joy and the little joys that you find in your day or in your week. Those will definitely help release that stress for sure. Because of time, the last question, I'm going to ask you to just give one word, okay, for the answer. So, so to wrap up our discussion, we talked about, where we've been, how we've survived the day to day. Now, looking at the horizon and where we're going, what is one word that you will use to describe the future of this field? So just very quickly, Biko, starting with you. You can say two words if you have a burning second word, but let's do one and then we'll go to Q&A.
I'll go with intersectional.
Thank you. Laura?
I'd say, I hope, decolonial.
Thank you. Alison?
Collaborative.
Thank you. Tashin?
Transformative.
Wow. All very powerful words. Thank you so much, everyone. So now we're going to go into the Q&A, and we're going to look at some of the questions that are coming in. So there's 4 questions, 123. Okay. Okay. So the first question is it realistic to find a job in development now, with funding shrinking, USAID, less funds from that? Will it not be the case that it's harder to get roles due to those to that happening, versus how it was for us, I guess, in our time. So what do you guys think? What do you guys think? Maybe 1 or 2 people can take the question so we don't eat up time. So who would like to go first? Just unmute and go, please.
I'll answer really quick. Yes. So I think USAID mostly funds large organizations, and you need to start looking at small, medium organizations. You're here for a reason, SMOs, OCIC. Yes, we all have a dream to work at UN. Maybe we will, fingers crossed. But there's so many organizations working at the grassroots level, the small scale level, who are making differences, who is also development. So don't get stuck in the, this week has just been in my head that James Baldwin quote, I can't be pessimistic because I'm alive. Don't let it get to you just because funding is shrinking and big organizations are shrinking. Start looking small.
Anyone else want to jump in?
I would like to quickly add that as youth, you're a lot more valuable than you think that you are. You have perspectives and knowledge that it's going to be beneficial in any room that you walk in. And for you all to be part of this event, I'm sure there is something that you can give to community, whether it is at the UN or grassroots or even at your local community organization. There is value in who you are and the knowledge that you have. So please don't underestimate yourself and please put yourself out there.
Yeah, thank you, Tashin. So the next question, how do you get the short-term contracts? How often do they come up? Assuming they're too short to be advertised fully, how does one find them? Would you like to take this, Biko?
Yeah, I can take it. Yeah, with short-term contracts, yeah, those are a little harder to kind of keep an eye on. My recommendation is honestly just sign up to like a bunch of different sector newsletters. Often people will directly share them with like their immediate listservs, so the immediate people on the mailing lists, for folks who are interested in events and jobs opportunities. So that will be my kind of go-to strategy there. Um, and then I think with if you're looking like within the short term kind of contract space, um, it's a little bit harder, but places like Charity Village will also have some listings every now and then. There are two if you're looking for something a bit more like a resource you can kind of point towards and look at. So yeah, that's I think that's more often what I kind of see on my end.
Laura, do you want to add anything to this? Yeah.
Yeah, I can add. I think it's the UN Association of Canada. They have a
Yeah.
program called Youth Breaking Barriers to Employment. And it's like subsidized short-term contracts. And that might also be helpful for like organizations to possibly then also hire you or offer you more opportunities beyond what that program offered. There's also something like Propel Impact, and they do like training or like impact investing, but it's like an analyst program and it's like a internship, but believe it's also like paid, but you get a chance to like leverage skills and work with an organization for a short period. So I think for youth specifically, there's a lot of programs catered towards like integrating them into like job opportunities. So that is something that you can look into if you're not necessarily finding like those direct contracts posted on different websites. So I think doing research in that lens of like opportunities for skill building that are tied to internships or tied to like shorter term opportunities with different organizations or agencies or stuff, that's also helpful. So I think that could be an option for short-term contracts. Other research assistant positions typically are short-term contracts as well. So if it is something that you're interested in, that could be an option. But that's some of the ways that I have found them at least.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Laura and Biko. Just to add to that as well, just make sure you're looking at GAC as well. They usually have, the 6-month opportunities to send you overseas using different organizations. So make sure you keep an eye out on that. Just sign up on the GAC listing so you can be able to get any opportunities that are coming through, because that's a very good place for you to be able to get the field experience, particularly if you're looking to do that. Last question. So how does networking actually help? I keep hearing this, do this, broaden your network, but it's not leading to concrete results, like, getting a contract. So does anybody want to take this?
I can go. I mean, um, I would like to say, like, once again, like me getting the job at the City of Toronto was a direct impact of me networking or just being part of the YPH, because I was able to meet one of the fellows who was currently working at that time, working with the city, and he was able to connect me with a job opportunity. At that time, when I was connecting with him, I didn't have it in mind that, oh, I need to find a job. I need to make this connection for the sake of like finding a job. It was just pure, genuine interest of like, hey, this sounds like a really cool person. I just want to get to know them. Hear their story, and maybe I can help them out with something. Because once again, we too have something to offer. So it should, like, when it comes to networking, it should be a mutual street. Like you take and you give as well. And somehow, some way, he was able to find an opportunity for me that it just happened so miraculously. Because sometimes when we're so hyper focused, we have our blinders on that this is exactly who I need to reach out to. This person's going to help me get a job. That didn't really help me when it came to networking events, but just leaning in with curiosity and genuine interest that, hey, I just want to meet people. And if it works, it works. I'm also personally very spiritual. I live it up to the universe and just hope it clicks. And I was very fortunate, lucky that it actually did for myself.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'll just add one last point and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, just for networking, again, it doesn't have to be, I like what you said, Tashin, about it being a mutual sort of exchange. You don't have to feel like, that person is giving me everything and I'm not giving them anything. You definitely have value and something to bring to the table. So always think about that, but always come prepared, as I mentioned earlier, because you want to go in also knowing your stuff. Yeah, but also kind of targets, the people that you can also connect with as well. Because I know sometimes it's a big world out there, right? And there's so many people, but you won't connect with everyone. That's just the reality of life. So the people that you really connect with, just reach out to them. And if they don't respond, just keep looking to make the right connections, right? It takes time. It's not a one-day thing. It takes time to build that community. So just keep doing it and you'll eventually get there. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. So we will wrap up here because of time. Thank you so much to the panelists for all their wonderful advice and information today. I will pass it over to Pragya to wrap us up.
Thank you, Christina. Hello, everyone. My name is Pragya Tikku, and I have had the pleasure of working with the YPH for the last 3 years. And I can confidently say that this is just a snippet of their work and would encourage you to follow their journeys through OCIC and also each of them individually. With that, on behalf of OCIC community and the team, I would like to offer my many thanks to our keynote speaker, Honorable Randeep Sarai, our wonderful moderator, who you now know was our YPH alumni and is also our current board member, Christina, our YPH alumni and panelists, Alison, Laura, Pico, and Tashin, for sharing their career journeys with us, their wisdom and advice for the youth here, and also for job seekers who are looking at the international cooperation sector. Thank you to also our hosts, Winter and Jeremy from the current YPH cohort. The OCIC team will now be posting in the chat a link to the complete listing of OCIC member International Development Week events. The week is half over, but there are still more opportunities to engage during this IDW week. Also, when the webinar ends, a short survey will pop up. Please take a moment to fill that out. We do value your feedback, and it is so important for us and our programming moving forward. Sincere thanks once again to all our contributors, as well as those behind the scenes, especially Sarah for leading this webinar, and also our staff team, Mishka, Shihara, Kim, and Lisa, for all their efforts in making this happen. Last but not the least, thank you to all our colleagues at Global Affairs Canada for their financial and logistical support in making the IDW events happen. Also, thank you to all of you for joining us today. I hope you have a great day ahead.